Connie, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Thanks, Peg. Hi, Scott or Sean. How are you?
I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to go ahead and get started. We'd like everybody, if they could, during our presentation time, which will take us no more than a half hour to get through here, to just go ahead and mute their microphones and close their camera. And then we're going to get back on for some fun networking, and we're going to do a breakout room. Hopefully everyone has received an email with our question that we're going to talk about later on our conversation. What is a sustainability initiative you would like to see implemented in Detroit or perhaps focused on more? So I'm going to go through a really quick update. Well, it's not quick really today because we're kind of going a little bit more into depth. And 1 second, because my laptop is not agreeing with me today. Okay, so I'm not sure how many people are familiar with all of our network, but we do have 23 2030 district networks across North America. Super excited to have 3 in Michigan, Detroit, Grand Rapids, and Ann Arbor. We all have the same goals. We go about it differently, but we'll go into our goal structure here in a minute. So when we started 2030 districts, it started off the 2030 architecture challenge. Then an architect recommended to architects to build buildings better and renovate them better, working to reduce carbon emissions within the built environment and the surrounding city. So we had a goal of doing this by 2030 at a 50% reduction from our baselines. However, we're almost to 2030 now, so we've kind of extending beyond that, and we now say the districts are trying to accelerate to zero and beyond 2030, zero emissions. On the 2030 network website, we do have progress report if you want to take a look at that all, but you can see here really what we're trying to do. We're just trying to reduce our environmental emissions from our buildings in our city by 50 to 65% by 2030. And to reach zero emissions by 2040. So how do we do this? We do this by collaborating with all of our members. We work to drive down energy and water consumption and carbon emissions from transportation to and from our buildings. We lead this effort to achieve these goals in a just and equitable fashion. We care quite a bit about environmental justice, as well as helping any member type, any building type in the city of Detroit, including houses of worship and multifamily. Some of the things that we're really focusing on now to get to zero emissions would obviously still be the energy efficiency, but everyone knows the new buzz now is to electrify our buildings. So that's a new topic in education that we'll be covering. We talk a lot about what's going on with the grid, and embodied emissions is also an important topic for us. We also advocate for building codes, policies, and incentives that will help our building members work towards a healthy building and a healthy city in Detroit. Kendall will cover in a minute here what's going on with our benchmarking ordinance, hopefully coming to the city of Detroit. Currently, we are the third, just as of yesterday, the third largest 2030 district in North America. We started with 5 buildings in 2017. So here we are today, super excited to have such a wonderful, robust, growing program. We all saw our ups and downs during COVID. We're glad we came out on the other end, and our members and partners were here to support and continue this movement. So we now have over 59 million square feet in our program just in Detroit alone, working together to reach our goals of a reduction of emissions. So currently we have 470 buildings in our program. We have 408 that are tracking their energy through Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and they're sharing this data with us. We never publicize it. We just use it to aggregate our data so that we can use it for reporting purposes. Kendall will cover a little bit about the DTE hub in a minute, but we have 217 buildings that are enrolled in this program, and 313 buildings are enrolled in the Detroit Energy Challenge. So that's really growing. We're really happy about that. We will cover all that and how that works in just a few minutes. Wanted to introduce our board of directors. So today, a few of them are on this call. I know I saw Peggy Kathy, Al, there's probably, I think Leonard's on here, a couple other I probably haven't seen on my screen just yet, but we have a wonderful board of directors working really, really hard behind the scenes to help this program grow and flourish. If you know any of them, feel free to ask them any questions about our program. So who are our members? It gets a little confusing sometimes because we do have 3 member types. So our program is for building owners, property managers. It's free for them at this point to belong. We've been free for 5 years. We are possibly in the coming months going to implement some sort of fee structure, but it's going to be for added services, not a basic service of belonging. So probably in the next few months, you might hear that change from us. Our professional stakeholders are for-profit businesses that belong to us. They do pay to belong in Detroit, and those are the companies that are bringing this program to our building members for free. And then we also have nonprofits that we team up and that and that is our community stakeholders. I just want to thank our sponsors because we literally would not be here without them today. So these are our 4 large sponsors, DTE, DNB, SEAL, and the Detroit Lions, who have been with us for a very long time, at least 3 of them since the beginning. So thank you for your support. Also want to thank our funders. Eagle has been a great supporter of our program, as well as General Motors, who supports our House of Worship program. I'd also like to thank all of our stakeholders. So I don't know that I got all 42 logos on this slide. It's getting a little full, but I still like to thank everybody for belonging. So our stakeholders sign up for an annual fee, and they can join just Detroit or Ann Arbor or Grand Rapids, or you can join all 3 districts. If somebody could shut their mic off, I think I got a little bit of background noise from somebody. Currently, here's our stats. And as I said, we have, I kind of went through these already, so I probably don't have to repeat them. This brings us up to being the 3rd, just barely the 3rd largest district in Detroit, as I mentioned, just over 59 million square feet. And the 2 other larger districts, we just surpassed Seattle, which was our very first district that was funded by the DOE. And so the 2 larger, I believe, are Cleveland and Pittsburgh. They are way ahead of us. So there's kind of a big gap from these big districts. And then we're at the top of the lower amount, but we're actually doing pretty good in Detroit. We're very proud of our numbers. And we have surveyed our members, and most of them say they join because they want to be a part of a movement in Detroit, as well as obviously reducing operating expenses and carbon emissions. But in reality, our program in Detroit is very focused on working together with all member types to create this great movement that we have going. So we have a few member programs that we want to cover today. Kendall will cover some of them, but we do have a special House of Worship program, the DTE Hub, the Detroit Energy Challenge, Michigan Battle of the Buildings that we support for the Grand Rapids 2030. We have a lot of technology pilot offerings. So this is if you're a current building member, we may reach out to you and ask you if you would like to test out a new program or a new technology in your building. So that's a fun program that we have. We also offer free energy assessments through some of our partners. And we always offer discounted or free tickets for our building members, discounted for our professional stakeholders and our community stakeholders. So this is our educational format. It's quite busy. So we do have our monthly lunch and learns, which I'm sure most of you have been on. Our April lunch and learn is going to be extra special. I'll talk about that in a little bit here for Earth Day. We do have 3 best practice groups: multifamily, House of Worship, and venue best practice groups. The museum best practice group that we started here in Detroit ended up going national through all 2030 districts, and that's a great program. So we have like the DIA and Charles Wright Museum participating in a lot of those national calls. It's really exciting to get on and see like 40 or 50 museums across the country working on best practices. We also have the Henry Ford Museum in our group. Their building technically does not sit in Detroit, but we did let them join our program. We also have some pretty big in-person statewide member meetings. We had our kickoff meeting in January. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. We have all member virtual meetings like today, and then we have an infrastructure webinar series coming up. And then our in-person events we'll talk about in a minute here. So as I mentioned, these are our 3 best practice groups. We have all of these venues here in our venue best practice group working really hard. They're just sharing great best practices with each other, and it just saves, I think, saves them a lot of time. Al from Huntington Place is on our call today, and he works, he's on that group, so he could let you know how it's working if you want to talk with him at all about that. Our House of Worship program, we have about 25 houses of worship in our program. And then our multifamily is growing. And so if you have a small multifamily building in Detroit, let us know and we can help you. We have some good, a good program going on for multifamily. We had our kickoff meeting in January. It was very exciting at this beautiful building here in Detroit. It's the Union Trade Carpenters Millwright for students. And if you weren't there, I would recommend going and seeing the inside of this building. So those every year we have a kickoff meeting. So keep your eyes out open for that again next January. A little bit of a recap. We usually have an event with DTE, DNV, CAM, and NECA to train contractors on incentives to help promote the incentives from DTE. That was fun. And Kendall's going to talk a little bit about our Detroit Energy Challenge coming up, which this building here was one of our winners, but this photograph is really just from a multifamily best practice meeting that we had this summer. This is our House of Worship program, and we're on our 2nd cohort for this program that we run with the EPA for congregations, and GM funds this wonderful treasure hunt program that we have. If you want any more information on it, let me know. And our awards breakfast last year was our first ever Detroit Energy Award winners for the biggest losers of energy in their building. And it was very exciting. It was at the Zero Net Energy building. We're going to be holding it there again this June. And we also had a wonderful time in Detroit last October when we hosted the 2030 Network Summit, where all the districts came to visit us in Detroit. And we had wonderful weather, and you can see the group there. And so many people were very impressed with what we're doing here in Detroit, but just Detroit itself. They were very impressed. And I had a couple people say to me, I want to move here. So I thought that was very exciting. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to let Kendall take over.
Thank you, Connie. Can you hear me okay? All right, perfect. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about how we do some of what we do and some of the benefits that we offer our building owners and managers who would join our program. So one of the first things we offer for our building members, Connie, there's a little, there we go. Okay. One of the first things we offer our building members is support with benchmarking their buildings and understanding their energy consumption. And the way that we do that for our buildings that don't already have an Energy Star account is we help put their property into the EPA's free tool, which is called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And it is an online tool that measures energy and water consumption, as well as waste materials and greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a great way to get started if you haven't already. Next slide, Connie. And another exciting offering that we have in partnership with DTE, DTE has been working with both the Detroit 2030 district and the Ann Arbor 2030 district to automate energy consumption data into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So this is available only to building members of Detroit and Ann Arbor 2030 districts. This is something that I support our building members in getting this set up and connected so that they no longer have to manually input their building's energy consumption. This may be of particular interest to larger buildings that have multiple tenants, whether it's commercial or multifamily buildings, but it's a great tool to understand your building's, your whole building aggregate data. Next slide. We also like to help connect our building members with their next steps. So oftentimes the next step is an energy assessment. So there are free energy assessment opportunities that exist through DTE, both small business and larger business. But we work closely with the DTE Energy Partnership team to connect our building members with them for some of the resources that are available. Next slide. We also have partnered with Michigan State University. They have something called an Industrial Assessment Center, and they have DOE funding for the next just under 4 years. They're hoping to continue that beyond the 4 years though, but they're able to offer free energy assessments, either ASHRAE level 1 or 2 assessments that are conducted by a team of students and faculty. And that includes a handful of commercial buildings that they're able to do each year, as well as industrial buildings. So last year we had 3 buildings in Detroit that were able to take advantage of this opportunity, and we already have connected several of our building members this year who will be receiving assessments this summer. Next slide. And we've also developed a dashboard, building member dashboard that's available at no cost for our building members. And there are actually some new features that have been added to this tool recently, and we're going to have to do a workshop to kind of get more into the specifics of that. But this dashboard goes a little bit further beyond what Energy Star Portfolio Manager does, in that you can track your building assets and your energy efficiency projects within this tool. And also connect your projects with DTE rebate and incentives that are available. So we will have more updates on this tool soon because Buildy has introduced some new features. Next slide. And this is just a little bit about that dashboard. So the dashboard is using something called Buildy, which is the platform. And this is just a little bit, just a graphic that kind of shows you some of what this tool can offer. So with all of these offerings, if we have building members that are interested in learning more, we can set up a brief meeting and talk more in detail about some of these opportunities that are available. Next slide. And lastly, I wanted to mention this is a new tool that we just started using. It's called Building Energy Analysis Manager, also known as BEAM. This is a DOE, Department of Energy supported tool that is used by jurisdictions to manage benchmarking ordinances, energy benchmarking ordinances, or building performance policies. We don't have a policy like that in Detroit, but we are a voluntary program. So we are starting to utilize this tool to manage all of the information and data. As you can imagine, with having almost 500 buildings in our program, that's a lot of data to manage. So this tool is going to help us do that. So it's going to help us with our district reporting. So how are we doing as a district as a whole? So it helps us facilitate the automatic data collection and analysis, but it also has a communication tool and an FAQ page, which we will continue to update with information for our building members. So we're going to begin using this tool soon, and all communications from this tool will be coming from Detroit reporting at 2030districts.org. And people can also submit inquiries through this tool as well. So I put the website here, but look for more information about this in the coming months. And next slide. So I just wanted to add, BEAM is going to help us as a 2030 district in our district reporting goals, but there's also going to be new features coming with this that will be of value to our building members as well. So building members will be able to use BEAM to identify future emissions projections for their buildings, and also build that roadmap towards their energy saving goals. So again, look for more information from us on this new and exciting tool. And lastly, I just wanted to provide a brief update on the Detroit benchmarking ordinance. I mentioned energy benchmarking ordinance and building performance policies. Detroit doesn't have any policies like that in place currently. However, the city of Detroit is reviewing a draft energy benchmarking ordinance currently, which would impact buildings in the city of a certain square footage. This map shows other existing benchmarking ordinances across the United States. You can see that Ann Arbor was the first city about 1.5 years ago to adopt a benchmarking ordinance. If the city of Detroit does adopt this policy, the 2030 district will be here to support our building members in complying with that ordinance. And that BEAM tool that I mentioned on the earlier slide will be very helpful in reporting the building's data to the city. Connie mentioned the Detroit Energy Challenge earlier. So our deadline passed on March 3rd, but there's always an opportunity to participate next year. The Detroit Energy Challenge compares your buildings, your last year's data to 2021. So it'd be comparing your 2022 data to 2021 data and identifying which buildings were the biggest losers. So the Detroit Energy Challenge kicked off last year after being put on pause during COVID. And we awarded 5 buildings in Detroit. We're going to be doing that again this year. Connie, can you go to the next slide? So first, I wanted to mention that buildings that participate in Detroit Energy Challenge are also automatically enrolled in Michigan Battle of the Buildings and vice versa. So there's a statewide competition as well as a local Detroit competition. So the statewide competition is going to be held on April 18th in Grand Rapids. Last year we had, I think it was 3 building members in Detroit that were awarded at the statewide level, which was really exciting. Next slide. And our awards breakfast is going to be held June 15th this year. We already have an Eventbrite link out for anyone who's interested in joining us. So this is going to be a breakfast where we're going to award this year's biggest losers in Detroit. And I just wanted to very briefly go through our awardees from last year. Our first place was the Beach Club Departments, which had a 59.63% reduction in energy consumption when they replaced their steam boiler with geothermal. Really exciting project. Next slide. Our second place was Fifth Third Bank. Our third place was Bedrock's Detroit Media Partnership. And then we had an honorable mention, Comerica Bank. And lastly, Huntington Place was our other honorable mention. So really excited to be able to recognize these buildings that are leaders in the city for reducing energy consumption. And with that, I can turn it back over to you, Connie.
Thanks, Kendall. Once again, I apologize for the double screen. I can't seem to get off my the proper loading here for just the one slide today. Sorry. I do want to mention our April Lunch and Learn, which is the 21st, sorry, the day before Earth Day. So we're excited to have a topic of reducing one-time use plastics. It's a new thing that a lot of people are talking about. A lot of cities are getting on board and companies, and we have a speaker from We Reuse, as well as a panel group from Redish in the CSO shop. So it's going to be an exciting lunch and learn. It's an hour and 15 minutes this time because we needed a little bit more time for the panel. So we hope that you will join us for this free meeting. And lastly, how to get involved before we get into our networking is it's easy to get involved if you're interested. You can always go to our website and look up more information. You can see all of our members there. You can see our events coming up. So it's a good place to visit once in a while. You can add a building into our program anytime. And like I said, we take any building in the city of Detroit. We do not take residential though. But We do take any size building, the bigger buildings that are doing a lot of work, sometimes they become our leaders and our mentors. But it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey of reducing carbon emissions. You could have done nothing and you can still join our program, or you can be a very well high performing building and we still want you to be a part of our movement. You can also sponsor our events. You can become a business, which is, professional stakeholders, which is our for-profit businesses. And you can also volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers for our program. And thank you to those that are on this call. You know who you are. We've had the same group of volunteers for a long time. How do you stay in touch? Our newsletters are really full of a lot of information and all of our events, and really the best way to stay in touch and up to date with everything. But as you can see here, we do have all of the social media in place if you want to follow us on any of that. So Kendall, I think if that is all you have, I think we're at the end of our presentation, which is good because we're only 2 minutes over time. So does anybody have any questions? You're welcome to open up your screens, raise your hand. I'm going to stop sharing and we can kind of answer some questions. And then once we get through a few questions, we will do our fun breakout room. We're just going to break out into 2 rooms and say hi to everybody, and then just answer that one question about sustainability initiatives in Detroit. Does anybody have any questions or any comments on anything at this time? Before we go into our breakout room, Kendall, there's a lot of people on here, so let me know if you see any raised hands. Okay, well, we hope everybody will open up their cameras and stay on our call. We're always here if you have questions anytime. This is recorded. If you miss some of it or you want to listen to it again, we have a YouTube channel that has all of our meetings on it. So even if you missed something a couple months ago, it will be there and it's always available. Met some new faces here. Anybody else want to join us with their camera? Got some new faces I see. Nice to meet everybody that's new. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do a breakout room. Kendall will be in one, I'll be in the other. And we're just going to have a little networking time and saying hello, and you could cover that question if you like that we mentioned earlier. So it's going to take me just a minute here to get that done, but I will be right there. You guys can talk amongst yourselves if you want before I get to the breakout room.
Connie or Kendall, for those of you, for those of us who joined late, me specifically, can you repeat the question for our breakout rooms, please?
Sure. Well, we're actually just going to stay in this one room because since my laptop isn't behaving today, I'm not able to do the breakout room. Sorry. So our question today is, what sustainability initiative would you like to see implemented in Detroit? Or is there one that's already implemented, but you feel that we need to pay more attention to it? So if there's anybody that has something in mind that they would like to talk about and say hello, that just let us know or jump in.
Hi, Connie, it's Bob. How are you? Hi, Kendall. Nice to see you, Peggy. It's great to have everybody on. I did want to ask real quickly, we have a stormwater ordinance here in Detroit, and a lot of commercial building owners are feeling stressed from the charges. I'm wondering whether we might be able to have either just a webinar from DPW or some other kind of educational opportunity, because I know there's a lot of building owners that feel stressed. And, you know, with climate change, there's a recurring issue too, maybe a session about green stormwater infrastructure, but I'd like to see something on the waterfront that we might be able to do just to help some of our building members and maybe even get more buildings involved. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what we've done on that and where we stand, and then Kendall will probably want to chime in on some work that she's done, and anybody else who might want to say something. So when we first launched, we had 3 or 4 in-person meetings on stormwater management, and we had DPW involved in that. I don't know if we have anybody from the city still on, but we worked pretty hard to help our members. At that time, it was still kind of a complicated process for them to go through the incentive that the city was recommending. We stepped away from that education and topic because we were focusing on just energy and water and transportation emissions. However, I do think that you're right that we should probably revisit that and you know, get talking about it again and see what's out, you know, what's out there for incentives. Kendall, do you want to talk a little bit? I know you've worked with some building members on reducing stormwater management or stormwater.
Yeah, I'll just add that although our focus has primarily been on the energy side, water certainly comes up, but it's usually when it's an issue. So I think after the flooding in June of 2021, August of 2021, we did have a lot of building members that were a lot of people's basements flooded, in addition to having to deal with the stormwater fees. And we weren't really set up at that time to help direct people to all of the different resources. I don't know if anybody really was prepared, but I think making sure we're prepared when that next storm hits, and being able to support our building members with both any sort of flooding, but also stormwater management. And I think one way we can do that is, I've been hearing stories, I'm sure all of you have as well, about people who have implemented stormwater management projects. And I think by highlighting those as case studies throughout our city of what people can do, because some people downtown might not have as many options, but other buildings may. So, but I think the DWSD team may have some ideas, and we could probably partner or work with them to do some additional workshops. But I think that's a good suggestion, Bob. And if anyone has further ideas on that too, feel free to reach out to Connie.
I just wanted to add that the city, I think, is establishing what they call a hub network with some of the buildings that they own. So the next time there's an outage, they're trying to have different hubs in different parts of the city that people can go to. These hubs will be resilient, so they'll have food, water, they'll have solar and electricity, and they'll be kind of almost like a Safeway station for people that, you know, need resources immediately. So I'd like to talk to Kendall and maybe Connie about, you know, trying to revisit that, because I think it is an issue still.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else have any comments on that? I know there's opinions turning in people's heads.
Hi, Mike, I'm a newbie. I'm glad
Hi, Mike.
you found your presentation informative. Thank you again. Is there, like, when I was meeting with the Detroit Water and Sewage, the new group that had put together the stormwater mitigation, they had talked about having like some boilerplate or pattern that businesses and homeowners could use to set up, I don't know, rain gardens and stuff like that, or for commercial buildings, having permeable parking. And so I was just wondering if it has expanded any and made it simple for people to kind of understand.
You know, I'm not sure what the city has done, but there probably isn't very many simple, inexpensive solutions to the problem. You need a lot of land, or you got to dig up your parking lots or your areas and add retention. You've seen some of those big tubes on some construction sites. So there's no real easy answer. I mean, for residents, I guess you could put in a backflow preventer to keep water from coming up through the sewer, but besides that, it's a big problem.
DWC has the ordinance manual that they can reference on the website for any design criteria, but for a boilerplate, no.
I think,
So this might be a good topic for us to have
yeah,
them cover, yeah.
we did run into issues when we were trying to even help our building members. One thing that we did learn is that obviously you want to connect with the city before you start any project, because you need to make sure that you're going to get credit for what you're doing. And obviously, like Bob's right, it's a little bit more difficult, I think, than most people think. And we don't have all the answers. We were trying to promote what the city was doing. A good example of a commercial building, I think, would be the Charles Wright Museum. They've done a lot of work, you know, with the bioswales and whatnot. But all we can do is kind of look at some projects that have been done and promote that and try to help our building members. If you want to talk about it individually, we're happy to do that. But this is a really important, good topic. I think it kind of coincides with recycling, only because it's a problem that it's not the same type of problem, but it's a problem that is big and has a lot of challenges. And we need better communication, I think, with what's going on with the city. So we will work on that and hopefully get some more resources together. Any other initiatives that anybody wants to talk about? I'd like to talk about, I have one, but I want to give everyone else a chance to talk. Say hello. Got another 10 minutes or so.
One thing we've been working on, I got involved with a team that included Highland Park on some DOE funding for community geothermal. And I really think we need to start pushing something more as broad as that, because some of the smaller projects aren't really going to get it done.
I'm sorry, Bob, can you, I read somebody's comment for a second. Can you start over again?
Yeah, I got involved with a team that included Highland Park and just inside Detroit for a community geothermal project. DOE funding phase 1 was like $750,000. We're waiting to hear if we've been selected for that. But that phase 1 would give you the money to do the design and kind of get your ducks in a row. And then if you're selected for phase 2, you can get up to $10 million to implement the project. There are a number of different grants per se from the DOE that should be looked at a little bit more, so we can let our building owners know what else might be available. But my big thing is we need to start getting more community oriented so we can get a little bit better control. With geothermal in itself, the bigger the community, the better chance you have of trading somebody that's generating a lot of heat per se, that heat can be transferred to a number of other businesses or homes to heat their business. To the point where I think they did a study out on the East Coast where if you can put it together properly, you're basically just trading energy back and forth between buildings. So we need to start trying to think on a broader implementation, I think, and try to push towards that. And 2030 might be a good vehicle for that, only because we have a number of buildings that are close to each other. And if they could start cooperating on something like that, it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Diana's on here, and I kind of have a question on geothermal. That's really one of my favorite renewables, but it's such a costly project, was such a costly project, you know, for NECA and IBEW, and then Kathy put it in the multi-family building, and that got her the, for Beach Club Detroit, put in a big geothermal. Does anybody know of a smaller geothermal project that's been out there, or are the prices coming down, or, you know, what are some thoughts there, Diana?
Well,
I
think
know Ann Arbor Schools has been putting in some geothermal, and they have some upcoming geothermal projects. So we might want maybe touch base with Jan and see, you know, or Josh Madison and Ann Arbor Schools, because I know they're working on some new geothermal projects. And I think they have an existing geothermal project that has some issues or problems that I think they're trying to work through, technical issues. So, you know, we were very fortunate that the IBW project went well, but there, you know, so those are the only ones that I'm aware of going on right now.
the price has come down only because the Inflation Reduction Act is now in effect, and that takes 30% right off the top in the tax credit. And if you can check a number of different boxes, you can get up to 60%.
Well, if you can take advantage of the tax credit,
Yes.
like
Well, you can always
municipalities
sell the tax credit, so you might have to sell it at a small discount, but that's available too. So that shouldn't be a hindrance to making something bigger happen and bringing the actual cost down significantly, I would say. I think the other area that people are kind of missing on that is if you could combine geothermal with sewer heat recovery, you could really put a big dent into reusing a lot of the energy that we're already wasting.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways to like engineer these projects. So if, you know, I
There
would
are,
love to see more geothermal.
and there are examples in Detroit that are actually quite old. 71 Garfield put in probably one of the first geothermal for a small project. And so that's been in existence since probably at least 2009. And it might be worthwhile to get a hold of Diane Van Buren and ask how that's going. I know that there are problems. There was a restaurant in Rochester Hills that put in geothermal, but they didn't engineer their field properly. So the cores were too close together, and that's why it didn't work well.
Yeah.
There's also a school that I worked on in Detroit that has geothermal, and that's Martin Luther King Junior Senior High School has a geothermal field under their football field. So it's instead of a vertical, you know, they went horizontal, and as far as I know, that's still working really well.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize with geothermal, it's like a battery, so you have to recharge it. You really need to try to design the system so that what happens in the winter gets replenished in the summer, or vice versa. So there's a lot that goes into the design of the system, and really the design of the building, or you got too much heat, how to dissipate it. You might have to do some, you know, some snow melts or something like that if you have too much, so that you don't get the battery too charged up one way rather than the other for cooling and heating.
Yeah, I mean, SES did a really good job with, I mean, they really know their stuff when it comes to geothermal. So, I mean, I was super happy with them with the IBEW Zero Net Energy Center project. So, you know, I would always recommend them, just because to everybody's point, engineering is the key. If it's not engineered right, if it's not designed right, then, you know. And then, I mean, the combination obviously was solar, you know, and I mean, the first step is really to reduce the energy consumption in the building to its lowest possible level before you do any renewable energy projects. But, you know, I mean, everything that we did on the IBEW project to reduce the baseline energy consumption, you know, took all the gas out of the building, converted everything to electric, and then, you know, so I mean, it was a $5 million project, you know, but I mean, that included the furniture and some of that included, you know, everything all in and some of the decorating things, the artwork and stuff like that. But I think the renewable energy part of it was probably $3.5 million. So I mean, it was a big investment, and that was back, we started that in 2014. So 2014 through 2016. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot, you know, obviously getting the energy usage to the lowest possible level before you even think about renewable energy is the key to keeping the cost down. And then of course, taking advantage of the tax credits and whatever, you know, available credits. So, and of course, PACE funding is helpful and all of those things. So I know we have all the experts on all that stuff on this call, but yeah. And there's a lot of DTE programs. Obviously, I would want to plug the DTE programs, but like we're working, I know Eric, hi Eric, working with Bedrock on, you know, their whole portfolio with the retro commissioning program. So that's been helpful in reducing their energy on just the operational side of things. So versus, you know, having to spend any money on capital. So there's a lot of good DTE programs out there. They're on the I mean, we run most of the operational side programs for DTE, and then there's a lot of, you know, more the DMV runs the downstream program, or, you know, regular prescriptive incentives. So there's a lot of incentives out there that, you know, certainly customers can take advantage of with free studies and even getting checks back and incentives back from DTE.
That's a good point. And Kendall, I'll let you go in a quick second, but I just want to say anyone that's still on here that we are a good resource. We may not be able to have a lunch and learn or a session on every topic that's out there, but we do have a large board. We have a large volunteer base, and we know a lot of our engineers and architects. So if anybody wants us to connect them with somebody that's working on something that they're interested in, we can do that. Kendall, did you want to say something? I lost her.
I was on mute. Sorry about that. I had a few thoughts I wanted to add to this conversation, but I think it was Diana who mentioned, you know, we want to focus on energy efficiency before renewable energy. I think everybody's moving so fast right now that it's like we have to do everything all at the same time with the timeline that we have to reduce carbon emissions. And so something that has been coming up for me with some of my meetings with our building members is replacing old HVAC equipment and, you know, looking at energy efficiency. And so just I'm reminding folks that when they're looking at doing these projects, make sure you're also looking at what it would take to electrify that process. Don't just think about replacing old gas equipment with gas equipment, because I think the trends that we're seeing is moving towards electrification, and that's not super easy to do. But I think if you're thinking about it from the beginning of your process and having that conversation up front, it's going to be really critical. I also wanted to ask if there's anybody in this group who's been involved with some of the new energy code that's coming. I heard that Michigan will likely be adopting a new energy code potentially next month. It would be 2021 code with a zero code appendix. Our neighbors in Ann Arbor in their 820 plan have already included that once the state adopts that code, the city is going to start enforcing that all new development and major renovations are all electrified, no gas. So I'm trying to help prepare our building members to, even though we don't have that same enforcement, that is going to be a trend that's going to continue. And so just making sure to keep people ahead of that.
You know who's really on top of this, and I know I've been in that Eagle collaboration on the energy codes, and they have a great collaboration, and there's a lot of experts that are involved in that. I have like 87 emails right now and all these conversations with Eagle that's been going on. But Kendall, the person, Sonia Pouncey, she is absolutely on top of this stuff. And so they've been actually drafting a letter. Let's see. Yeah, they've been drafting, which it can't technically, I guess, legally come from Eagle. So there's all the people that are in the collaboration, which there's 39 people. And Jake Wilkinson at Eagle is heading this up. But so if you want to get, a good, some good information and exactly where that stands and what the collaboration has been doing, it's a lot of, people from different municipalities, and then all the Eagle people and some Lara people, and I'm just looking at this list. So there's a lot of stakeholders that have been weighing in on this, and so Sonia is really on top of it. So, or Jake Wilkinson. So if you want to touch base with either one of them, they can give you a good update on that and probably share a copy. I think the copy of the drafted letter is in that. So if I have that, I'll send that to you, Kendall.
Great. Well, it's 1 o'clock. There was a couple comments in here. I don't know if you can scroll back, Kendall, and see them. Anybody else have anything else they want to throw out there? I do want to make one comment on the recycling comment I meant earlier. All I meant by that was that it's a kind of a big citywide issue, but Green Living Science and Recycle here are both doing great jobs in that arena. And Logan from Green Living Science is going to be presenting to our houses of worship coming here in April. Another good topic and good program, right, Logan?
Yep, very excited to present to you all. Oh, sorry, that's the dog. Present to you all next month. And then if you have any questions in the interim, I'm presenting to the House of Worship group, but about commercial recycling or any other issues with waste and circular economy in your offices or organizations, please let me know. We can always get on the phone or chat via email and discuss your needs.
Great. Okay. Well, thank everybody for joining us. And sorry I had some technical difficulties, but you know how that goes. Everything's fine until you start the meeting.
We even went through it all like 10 minutes before.
All this morning, everything perfectly fine until I don't even know what I did different. I got a glass of water and it all changed.
Hey, Connie,
Uh-huh.
are you at Lawrence Tech? Is that where our office